The message glowed on my phone like a neon insult. Don't bother coming to my wedding. We don't want failures there. I stared at it, thumb hovering, then dropped the phone on the counter. I wanted to throw it, smash it, but my kitchen was small, and I didn't want glass flying. Have you ever had family cross your boundaries so sharply it feels like your own reflection is mocking you? I poured coffee, black, letting the bitter warmth anchor me. My name is Lila Moreno, 28, and I'm still shaking, though it's the kind of tremor you hide behind smiles and nods. My brother, Jordan, always had a taste for drama, but this was pure cruelty. The Riverside Manor booking flashed to my mind. 100 white chairs, chandeliers, the string quartet waiting. I had coordinated it all, from the rose arrangements to the tasting menu. Months of work, of joy, all funneled into that day. And he wanted to erase me from it, like I had never mattered. I dialed my event manager, letting the phone ring twice. Yes, Alex. His voice was always calm, a professional anchor. I swallowed a slow breath. Cancel the Peterson wedding, I said. The words were clipped, calm, almost mundane, but inside my chest roared. Everything. Flowers, catering, the venue. Just cancel it. There was a pause. Are you sure? This is huge. They've already confirmed. I'm sure, I said, and hung up before he could argue. It wasn't just wedding logistics. It was acknowledgement, a shift in power. My hands were steady now, but my mind danced with the images of his smug smile when I'd arrive, hurt and defeated. That would not happen. Outside, the city hummed, indifferent. The sound of cars, distant laughter from a nearby cafe, the low rumble of a bus. It all seemed to echo my pulse. I moved to the window, traced a finger across the glass, leaving a foggy streak. That streak felt like a crack in the facade of my life. I had to decide, break under the weight of his words or let them fracture him. I remembered the key, the small, bronze one I kept on a chain in my drawer. It had opened the office safe at Riverside Manor during my internship, long before Jordan's wedding dreams took over my life. That key had always represented access, control, opportunity. Tonight, I realized it represented more. I sipped the coffee, letting the bitterness settle. My lips curved, almost imperceptibly, as a plan formed. Not violent, not loud, but precise. The kind of revenge that slipped under the radar, silent but undeniable. I sat back, the morning sunlight slicing across the kitchen floor, and for the first time I felt it, calm, sharp, inevitable. The Riverside Manor email pinged in my inbox just after noon. Reservation confirmed, deposits cleared, menus finalized. I scrolled through the documents with methodical care, every click tightening the coil of satisfaction inside me. Jordan thought he had won. He hadn't even realized the game had changed. I grabbed my notebook, the leather one with the cracked spine, the one I always carried to jot thoughts no one was meant to see. On page 23, I began outlining vendor calls, confirmation cancellations, subtle delays. No chaos, just absence. Each bullet was a measured step, surgical. Every disruption had to feel accidental, like the universe itself conspired to rearrange his perfect day. I texted Alex, confirm cancellations. Make sure nothing appears as if I touched it. Riverside Florist Band. No glitches that scream me. His reply came instantly, understood. The word alone made my pulse jump. Allies mattered, but timing mattered more. Later, I drove past Jordan's apartment. The streets were sticky with afternoon heat, the scent of fried street food hanging in the air. He waved from the balcony, oblivious, holding a bottle of something sparkling and cheap, celebrating as though victory was already his. I slowed, watching the smug tilt of his head, the way his fiancée clung to his arm. I could almost hear her thoughts. He's perfect, isn't he? Almost laughable. Inside the car, I traced the outline of the key dangling from my neck. It felt heavier today, like it remembered the weight of past triumphs. Symbolic, yes, but also practical. Opportunities had a way of appearing for those willing to recognize them. And I recognized this one. By evening, I was home again, pacing, sketching out the day of timeline in obsessive detail. Light from the street lamps flickered through my blinds, painting stripes across the floor. Shadows fell long and fractured. I imagined the white chairs, the bouquets of roses, the perfectly folded napkins, and how none of it would matter come Saturday. The realization brought a thrill, sharp and unashamed. Then my phone buzzed. A group text from my cousin Emma. Jordan is bragging about the guest list. He doesn't even know Lila is stepping back. LOL. I smiled, a slow, deliberate curve. She didn't know my full plan, but she would. Everyone would, eventually. I sank onto the couch, the notebook open on my lap, pen poised. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. This wasn't about rage. It was precision. Cold, meticulous, unyielding. Like chess, and I was always 3 moves ahead. The city outside murmured its ordinary secrets. I sipped tea, black, letting the quiet stretch. And as the night settled, one thought burned brighter than the lights from the skyline. When they realized I wasn't the failure, it would be too late for excuses. Saturday morning arrived like a calm before a storm. I woke to sunlight cutting sharp angles across my bedroom floor, dust motes drifting in the beams. My reflection in the mirror stared back, eyes dark-ringed but focused, lips pressed in a line that refused weakness. I'm Lila Moreno, 28, and today wasn't about anyone else. It was about balance, restitution, and quiet satisfaction. My phone buzzed again, a wedding vendor group chat. Jordan's big day. Pictures of white tents, floral arrangements, table settings, all perfect. My pulse didn't quicken. Not yet. Every image, every update was a note in the symphony I was conducting from the shadows. I checked my watch. Time to move. I slipped into my coat, the one with deep pockets and a subtle elegance, the kind that let you blend into any event unnoticed. The key rested against my chest, warm against the fabric. Not symbolic anymore, it was tactical. At Riverside Manor, I arrived just as the first staffers were prepping. Alex had texted earlier, all cancellations processed. Vendors compliant. No trace. I smiled at the screen, imagining Jordan's smug grin morphing into confusion. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lilies and polished wood. Everything gleamed under the morning sun. But it didn't matter. No bouquets would be delivered. The chairs might be stacked neatly in a corner, but the linens wouldn't arrive. The cake? Not here. The band? Double booked elsewhere. Every thread I'd pulled earlier converged into a seamless absence. My phone buzzed again. Emma, are you coming? Jordan is freaking out. Says half the flowers are missing. I didn't reply. No need. She was witnessing the unraveling firsthand, and that was enough. I paused in the grand hallway, letting the silence sink into the polished floors. The clock ticked steadily. Soon the chaos would bloom. I could almost hear the murmur of disarray, the whispers, the confusion, the perfectly curated perfection crumbling like dry leaves underfoot. And then it struck me. I wanted to feel satisfaction, yes, but there was something more potent, the calm certainty that I had orchestrated it without rage, without confrontation. Just observation, control, patience. The key against my chest seemed to pulse as if alive. It had led me here, held the sequence together, and now it was part of the aftermath I would watch unfold. I looked out through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the river catching the morning light. A thought slid through me, quiet, insistent. Revenge isn't always noise. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's an empty hall where a wedding should have been. I leaned against the railing, watching shadows stretch across the polished floor. And as I traced the faint reflections of sunlight, one question hovered. When they finally realized I wasn't a failure, when the truth hit, they would never forget it. By noon, the manor was alive with panic. Staff whispered urgently. Phones pressed to ears. While Jordan's fiancée stormed in, the heels clicking sharp against marble. Her face was a mask of disbelief, her voice shrill, betraying the panic underneath. "Where is the cake? The linens? The bouquets?" she demanded. Jordan stood frozen, a drink sweating in his hand, and I almost laughed. Not out loud, of course. Silence was my weapon. I lingered near the staircase, just out of sight, watching him unravel like fragile glass. "Everything was confirmed," he stammered, voice cracking. "The florist, the band." "They double-booked," someone muttered. "And the linens haven't arrived. Caterer says—" The rest of the sentence was lost in the cacophony of phones, emails, and flustered staff. I didn't move. I didn't intervene. I let the chaos flow, letting every delayed delivery, every miscommunication, every overlooked detail stretch the tension like a taut wire. I could feel the weight of the key in my pocket, a grounding pulse against my thigh. I had planned this meticulously. Subtle cancellations, a few well-timed calls, minor delays that seemed coincidental but were anything but. It was surgical, invisible, and devastating. Through the windows, the river glinted, serene and indifferent. I watched the light hit the water, thinking about how events could seem beautiful from the outside while collapsing internally. Jordan's world was splintering, and he didn't even know I was behind it. Emma appeared beside me, phone in hand, her eyes wide. "Lila, he's freaking out. Everyone's looking at him." I tilted my head slightly, letting a calm smile brush my lips. "Let them," I whispered. Her nod was subtle, but I knew she understood. She wasn't part of the chaos, just a witness, and that mattered. Allies were rare, but when aligned, they magnified impact. A server tripped over a chair, a stack of napkins scattering. Jordan's fiancée shrieked, flinging her arms. Jordan's shoulders slumped. I felt no triumph in cruelty, only injustice. This wasn't about humiliation. It was clarity, a mirror held up to the arrogance that had tried to erase me. I moved toward the balcony, letting the noise drift behind me. The city hummed below, unaware. And there, in the middle of the turmoil, I realized something. Revenge didn't have to roar. It could whisper, orchestrated with patience, leaving no trace of rage, only undeniable truth. The key rested in my hand now, cold and solid. A symbol had become a tool. A memory had become leverage. And as I leaned against the railing, the sunlight catching in my hair, I understood fully. Sometimes the most powerful statements are made without a word. By late afternoon, the manor had descended into disarray. The string quartet had canceled last minute. The caterer couldn't deliver because of a scheduling mix-up I'd quietly confirmed earlier. Flowers were nowhere in sight, leaving the tables bare, sterile. Jordan's fiancée paced in tight circles, heels clicking, hands fluttering like trapped birds. I stayed in the shadows near the grand archway, arms folded, watching. Every detail unfolded exactly as I had planned. The thrill wasn't in watching them panic. It was in knowing that I had orchestrated it with precision, invisibly, without a trace of my presence. Jordan approached a server, voice trembling. "What's happening? This is impossible." The server shrugged helplessly. Everything was scheduled, everything confirmed. "I don't know why." He cut her off, his confidence crumbling. I felt a strange satisfaction. Not cruelty, but vindication. The key in my pocket seemed to hum softly, a reminder of the access I'd always had, the control I'd always wielded when others underestimated me. I leaned against a marble column, letting the afternoon sun warm my back, watching the chaos consume him. A thought struck me sharply. Revenge isn't about making someone suffer. It's about reminding them of reality. And the truth is a sharper blade than any words or insults. Emma nudged my shoulder. "He looks like he's about to implode." She grinned, quietly, understanding the elegance of patience. I nodded subtly. Allies weren't loud. They just knew when to witness. A waiter fumbled with trays, sending a cascade of water glasses clattering to the floor. Jordan's fiancé gasped, and he froze mid-step, the color draining from his face. I felt no glee, only an odd calm, the kind that comes from knowing your plan works without interference. Outside, the river shimmered gold, reflecting sunlight as if mocking the turmoil inside. I traced the outline of the key in my hand, realizing it had evolved from a tool into a symbol. Control, access, power earned, not demanded. I walked slowly toward the balcony, letting the noise fade into the background. The wind caught strands of my hair, brushing my face. And for the first time that day, I allowed myself a quiet smile. Not triumphant, not cruel, just acknowledgement. I had done what was necessary. The wedding, the perfection, the arrogance. It had all been dismantled without spectacle, leaving only truth. I touched the key one last time before sliding it back into my pocket. Calm settled over me, sharp and clear. Jordan's world would never forget this day, not because of yelling or confrontation, but because of absence, precision, and inevitability. And in that moment, I realized something that would echo far beyond Riverside Manor. Silence is sometimes the loudest statement one can make. Evening fell, and the Manor's grand hall was a study in chaos disguised as elegance. Candles flickered, reflecting off polished floors, casting long shadows across tables, still bare of linens and flowers. Jordan stood near the entrance, clutching his phone like a lifeline, his fiancée draped to his side, her nails digging into his arm. I remained upstairs, leaning against the railing, watching. Every misstep, every flustered staffer, every whispered phone call was part of the symphony I'd composed in silence. The key, warm against my palm, reminded me that planning is only half the battle. Execution is where clarity resides. A sudden shout below made me glance down. Where is the seating chart? Jordan's voice cracked, echoing against the high ceilings. The panic in his tone was deliciously subtle, not mocking, not gloating, just observation. Emma sidled up beside me, eyes wide. You're not even reacting. Shouldn't you be upset or something? I shook my head, a faint smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. Watching is enough. I remembered every slight he had ever delivered, every dismissive comment, every smug grin. None of it compared to the meticulous unfolding of today. I wasn't seeking revenge for the sake of cruelty. I wanted recognition. And here it was, undeniable, tangible. A staffer tripped over a misplaced chair, spilling a tray of glasses. Jordan's fiancée shrieked, running to clean up, while he muttered under his breath, panic edging into fury. The key pulsed in my pocket, not literally, of course, but metaphorically, as if acknowledging the alignment of preparation, timing, and opportunity. I closed my eyes briefly, letting the sounds below wash over me. The tapping of shoes on marble, whispered exclamations, the faint ringing of a phone dropped in haste. Every sound was part of the crescendo, every detail a note in the quiet orchestra of justice I had composed. By the river balcony, the water caught the fading sunlight, scattering gold and crimson across my vision. I traced a finger along the railing, thinking about control, patience, and inevitability. The wedding had been stripped of perfection, not with rage, not with confrontation, but with precision. I exhaled a long, deliberate breath. Calm and quiet filled me, sharper than any scream could ever be. The day had unfolded as I had envisioned. Jordan's arrogance had met its mirror, not in a spectacle, but in subtle, unarguable truth. The key pressed against my palm one last time before I slid it back into my pocket. It had led me here, guided me, and now it rested as a symbol of clarity, patience, and the undeniable power of presence over absence. And as the last rays of sun dissolved into twilight, I realized the truth I had orchestrated. Revenge need not roar. Sometimes it simply whispers, and the echo lasts far longer than any shout. Night had settled over Riverside Manor, and the remnants of chaos lingered like smoke in the corners. Candles guttered, tables remained bare, and Jordan's fiancé had retreated to a corner, whispering urgently into her phone. He slumped in a chair, shoulders heavy, face pale. Every ounce of control, he thought he had slipped like sand through his fingers. I watched from the balcony above, the key cold in my pocket now, a weight I welcomed. This was the moment where subtlety met consequence. The perfection he had flaunted, the arrogance he had carried like armor, had dissolved. Not violently, not with spectacle, but with invisible hands pulling threads he didn't see until it was too late. Emma appeared beside me again, whispering, "He's actually shaken. I've never seen him like this." "Good," I said softly, eyes on him. "He needs to see the truth, not just feel it." I remembered my own moments of erasure, of being sidelined, overlooked. None of those memories screamed anymore. They guided me. Every call, every cancellation, every delayed delivery had been a stitch in the fabric of accountability. And now, the fabric stretched taut, impossible to ignore. A server dropped a tray of champagne glasses, the clatter echoing through the hall. Jordan's head snapped up, panic flaring, and I could see the realization dawning on him. His world, the one he built on ego and disregard, had holes he could no longer patch. I moved slowly toward the grand staircase, letting the shadows swallow me. Silence was my cloak. I didn't need confrontation. My presence alone was enough. The city lights beyond the windows shimmered, distant and indifferent, reflecting a life moving on while he wrestled with consequence. Emma nudged me, her grin subtle. "Ready?" I nodded, thinking about closure, the delicate shift from revenge to resolution. This wasn't about humiliation. It was about balance restored. About teaching him that power isn't inherent, it's earned, and neglecting the bonds of respect and empathy carries weight. From the railing, I traced the key in my fingers one last time. It had been a tool, a symbol, a silent guide through a day of precision. And now, as the chaos below reached its peak, I felt a quiet satisfaction. Not loud, not boastful, but absolute. The wind brushed my hair, cool and steady, carrying with it the final understanding. Revenge is not destruction. It is reflection, clarity, accountability. And tonight I had achieved it. The last whispers of panic floated up from the hall. I exhaled slowly, letting the night hold me. The key slipped back into my pocket, the symbol now complete.